Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another Supercoach Insider podcast. My name is Swizz, here to talk Road to Round 1, reviewing your teams Part 2. February the 13th, so we're 31 days out right now from the start of the season and the first lockout. It's going to creep up on us. Right now we're, I think, 12 teams through our team summaries. So we'll be finishing off that, and then we'll be into the pre-season games, which I think is the first weekend or around Feb 23rd or 24th. Might be the Thursday, Friday around there. So, we're only a couple of weeks away from seeing some footy. As always, thank you for all the support from the community. In particular today, Phantom listed us as the number 32 most influential Supercoach AFL fantasy people out there. So appreciate that. Shout out from him. And all the support, all the messages we constantly get. Thank you to Splash Vodka, as always. We can't do that without the support of our sponsors, so thank you. And as always, check us out on all our social media platforms. Swizz26 if you want to connect directly with me, or Supercoach Insider 100. Part of that Phantom review, I did shout out a few other podcasts and people that should be acknowledged, so definitely check them out, and also check out his list of top 40. Some great content there for those people who are into their AFL fantasy and Supercoach. You've also got TikTok these days, so doing some great stuff there, YouTube, Stitcher, Twitch, and Spotify and Soundcloud. So definitely check those out. All right, so we are reviewing your team. So we're going to start off, and we've got Mitch's up here. You can see he's got $18,000. Now, first thing I'll sit there and say is Money in the Bank, really good discussion. I know Chris and I were having this discussion the other day. How much is too much? He was even debating at one point going up to as close to 300k. My theory on that is whatever kind of, I think the first base is 22,000, because that takes your 102k rookie up to the 123.9, I think it is. So in case like Jury or somebody like that doesn't work out, you've always got that option to get up there. But it should be about as much cash as you need to sort of make some of those, if you're on those fence 50-50 decisions. Now, I try to start the more expensive players. For example, let's say it's Wits versus English. I'll try to start a Wits, knowing that I can always go down. Now, I don't really want to trade premiums. I'm just using that as an example. But for example, Chris is looking at, say, Sheed versus Setterfield. So he's leaving enough cash to start Sheed to make sure he can still get up to Setterfield if Setterfield was to fire those first couple of rounds. Now, the argument would be just start Setterfield, but if there's a player you kind of like more, you usually start them. But you want a little bit for those correction trades. So potentially you want to make 2 correction trades. So if you double that 22 figure, it might be 44k in the bank. I know a lot of people like the perfect team and try to get down to 0, and we all want the certain players in. And when I release my team later today, you'll definitely see that there's a couple of decisions I've made where my cash has got down to about $800. So I kind of really want to correct that, but at the same time, there is certain players I like. All right, so to start off with Mitch here, very different backline first. And it's good because there's some very similar teams here and some very different. I think Chris and I might have about 4 players different. I think 2 weeks ago, Ben and I had about 4 players different. So there's always players we're going to like, and a lot of the Supercoach community are going to have similar teams. But I do like the odd pod come up. There's no right or wrong answers unless the player's like severely had a big role change or is injured. You pick a strategy that you like. But I think the main thing is that if you've seen something you're confident with, go with it. And that, obviously we're here to guide, but back yourself in. We saw Abdul last year backed himself in with a few real roughies, and definitely paid off for him and that, and nearly took out the prize. So I can sit there and say, Sard and Ridley, you'd rather Doherty and Stewart. Yeah, of course, but there are reasons why they could go well. We know the Bombers backline, they do get their fair share of points. We've seen that with Redmond and last year, and Ridley before that. And then Sard naturally had that big year last year. We know Zach Williams is out. He definitely scores a lot better. So, I like something different, and it's that kind of cheaper version to those big 5 premiums. Personally, I like the 5 big premiums in your Sinclair, Sicily, Doherty, Stewart, and Dawson. Probably in order at the moment, I've got Stewart, then Dawson, Doherty, and then Sicily, Sinclair. But, there's no reason why those two don't look good in your back line. We talked about captain's options the other day. I think Clary is as safe as you can get. So definitely one worthwhile having. Even if it's not Clary, I think you need either a Laird or possibly a Neil. But with 50% of the comp, going to have Clary to lock in. He does play quite a few late games early on in the season. So I think he's as safe as houses there. Finn Callahan, he's been bouncing in and out of my side as well. So I kind of like that setup that you've got going. Who else do we have here? So your rucks, Marshall, Lysett. Now, Lysett's a good discussion at the moment with English and his, I think, third soft tissue injury this summer. He's definitely come out of favour for a lot of people, including myself. So is it Darcy Cameron who's carrying injury? Is it Lysett, who could be this year's Jared Witts? Or do you go the safety of a Jared Witts? There's a lot of up and air for the ruck, so I don't mind that. It's just what's your backup plan? Obviously, much easier to go Darcy Cameron, and then if he goes down and Lysett fires, easy to go that way. But, Lysett could definitely be a good performer. He's not a huge scorer. Like, he's not going to go like 105. But he has gone that sort of 94 to 100 before. Is it enough is the question. But is that enough? Like with the rucks this year, are we expecting the rucks to go 110? I think a lot of them are going to go around that 100 mark anyway. So you are saving money with him. Midfield, love it. A lot of people are now going that 4 deep. I've come along round to that. Cunnington, I'm not 100% sold because I think North Melbourne have a lot of midfielders. But I definitely understand the pick there. So Fergus Green's another good one, and I think I've seen him appear in a couple of the teams. We talked about him on the Hawthorn pod. 25-year-old mature age, played 5 games at the Bulldogs. Last 2 years has been at Box Hill. Has been part of their system. So with Gunston going out, there's definitely a role for him at some point throughout the year, possibly at the start. So I like that one on the bench. Nice start off there. We move into Corey. So Corey here might be a little bit hard to see but we've got, he's gone Dawson. He's also gone Sard again. Goda we've got a few questions about because he seems to be playing in the B team in Match Sim. So maybe have a look at options there. If you've got a bit of cash, maybe up to Caulfield. That's the one where we're saying, go the more expensive person. McKenna versus Wilmot's going to be a great discussion because I don't think we can start both. I think Wilmot's looking more likely to be in that sub candidate. McKenna I'm warming to more because he's looked like he's got that role half back / running through the midfield. Just hasn't able to find the ball so far in Match Sim. So one to watch through the preseason. But obviously if he looks fit and firing and getting a bit of that ball, he's going to come into a lot of teams. The 4 big dogs, Laird, Oliver, Miller and Bont. I love Took. He looks so fit at the moment. Talked about him the other day. He's averaged 124 and 120, but outside a couple of slow games there, I think in patches he was averaging about 130. So maybe it was 128 last year and 131 the year before. So definitely no reason why he can't be up there again. He could potentially be the number 1 scorer. Next to him is who I think will be the number 1 scorer this year is Bont, as long as he plays pure midfield. Huge on that. So like that again, Marshall, Cameron as your rucks. The 3 big dogs, but this time it's Flanders and Allen. We've talked about Flanders in the Gold Coast pod. Had some good VFL numbers early in the year. Came in. Can he make that transition to as that 4th or 5th midfielder? I'm not sold on it at the moment. But at least with Flanders' price, it's easy to go down to a Bruce or a King or something like that. So, as we say, the more expensive guys does make life easier. All right, who we have now? We've got, so it's Corey. So this is Ben. Start again. That's 3 starts in a row. I guess this is with Zach Williams news going down. Averaged awesome last year with Williams out 567. Doc Diddy playing the midfield. So it's an interesting pick. Maybe is Brayshaw the other option there at 550. Role dependent. So something to think about. But like that again that we talked about Godard. Just watch him because how North are going to set up. There's a lot of talk about now Zeeble getting his old role back as well. Be interesting that Clarkson would go down that road because he's obviously got a free hit this season, but it's definitely some food for thought. We've got Clary, Bont, Cripps, a little bit like value in this midfield. Tommy Mitchell, I know Chris is big on him. I'm not 100% sold. I think he's obviously going to have a spike because more CBAs, but just the way Pies play, Is he going to really get back to that high scoring? But, at 528, if you can get anywhere close to 110, it's a great value pick. Paddy Cripps, I think without Hewitt and Walsh to start off with, is going to start well. He has been in my side quite a bit. He's out at the moment, but I do really like the Cripps pick. So pretty good there. This is a bit different. Blitz half. So he actually started in my side. If I knew he was playing pure ruck or pure midfield, yeah, but I just think he's a bit of a Mr. Fix-It, but he's pretty reliable. We know he's won best of fairest. He scores around the 100 mark. I'm not 100% completely sold on that, but, not too bad. Winghagen has been used as a tagger in the past, but that's an interesting one as a mid-price. So at least, again, 266, you've got the option to go down if that doesn't look like working out. Saints should have a few players back, Hunter, Clark, Caulfield. So how that all sort of formulates and how Ross Lyon puts their team together. Not as much news coming out of the Saints midfield as we would like, so that's one to definitely watch. But no, it's quite interesting there. Okay, I think it's a Tello. Sicily, yes, finally seeing him in a side. I haven't had him in my side once. I've had all the other four big dog defenders, but I haven't yet. But nothing wrong with the pick. We saw what he did last year. He's just the sort of player that's not going to go huge. Like, he's not going to put out a 150 and hurt you if you don't start him. But as a guy that could definitely, average 115, 120 and keep his price, absolutely he could. Hawthorn are going to see more ball. Doesn't look like he's going to go near that forward line, so no reason not to be scared off of him. But at the same time, I think Doherty, Stewart have shown in the past that they can go 150s, and that scares me if I probably don't start one of them because they could price you out at the same time. Sicily's less likely to go drop a lower score because he's going to see so much ball, intercept marking, kick-outs, all that sort of great Supercoach scoring, the points accumulation that we'd love to see, compared to, Doherty potentially, if he's in different roles, might, and then Stewart always seems to either get injured or put one stinker in. So Charlie Dean, take him out. He's on the long-term injury list, so that's a big one. Butters, I would probably start him in your forward line, but we'll have a look at that at the moment. Brayshaw, Chris has been pretty big on Brayshaw. Their start to the season definitely is in that mix with Steele and Cripps, so I don't mind that. Let's have a look at that forward line and see why can't Butters fit in there. Yeah, the Grundy's a good one. Straight off, I don't like the 5 pick that much. He's going to be playing more forward. Like, I'm not going to knock people starting him, but I just don't see him as good as some of these other mid-prices. For a guy, if he's going to forward line, I think, depending on how much cash, I don't know if you get 27,000, could you get Butters in the forward line and Fife up to... Oh, you've already got Dom Sheed. I was going to say, could you get Dom Sheed in there? But you do already have him. Well, that's an interesting one because, even if it was the case, I'm trying to think, would Butters be more worth to be Tom Mitchell or Tom Green in that? So that's probably something to think about as well. I'm just not 100% sold on the 5 pick, but at the same time, he's been a champion for so long, so it wouldn't surprise me. The rest, the rookies and that, it looks pretty solid. That's probably the only thing that stands out there for me. We got Corey Cotsey now. Again, Sicily, Stewart, so you've got two of the big guys down there. So it's interesting. Some people going those big guns. Some other people going more value. Forward line very similar. Dunkley, Cornelia, Taranto. It's either if you've got the 3, or other people have Rosie, or we saw Butters there, and they actually go the 4, or maybe a Cunnington or Zeeble type, and then your Allens and McLeans, Bruces, Flanders, Kings. It seems to be very similar sides there, so that's no problem. English, I want to own. It's just those soft tissue injuries that are going to worry me. And then very similar, a lot of people are going to have Ashcroft Phillips, M7, M8. I did toil with Phillips, M9, but I think he's going to score too well that I don't want him sitting on my bench. So very structure, very similar to some of the other teams we've already seen there. Again, and it depends on how deep you want to go. I don't mind Green, Mitchell, Hopper and Sheed seem to be very popular at 5 and 6 as well. So, pretty stock standard there. We're moving on to Tim. So we've got Doherty. Here we go. Now we've got the Brayshaw. We've got Ridley. So these are those more mid-price and cheaper defenders and that. Brayshaw, if he gets the right role, especially we were talking about the other day, how he fits in with those CBAs and, with Salem and Bowie and how he has to, play the roles. I pointed out that in wins, not in wins, in actually the top teams, when he plays the top teams, he averages so much better than he does against the lower teams. I don't know exactly the breakdown off the top of my head, but they do, if they're going on a run where they're playing soft teams, for whatever reason, it just seems Brayshaw doesn't score that well. Outside that Essendon game where he took, 45 marks and scored like 170 Supercoach and that. So, most of the other ones, just have a look at that. But I think Brayshaw, depending on his role, he's a solid pick. Ridley, no problems with that. As we move through some of the other there for Tim, Oliver, Bont, Parrish is the first time we've seen him. He's in that mix again with that Steele, Cripps pick. Brayshaw, so I know Parrish getting a little bit more love because they do have that softer start to the year, and we know he can rack it up, and we think he should get the keys to the midfield. Warple appearing for the first time, not as in love with the Warple pick as I am maybe like a Sheed, but again, it's probably his last opportunity. So if Warple does get in that midfield and is number 2 to Newcombe, definitely we've seen in the past he can average around that 90 mark, so it's not terrible. I just don't like it compared. In saying that, it's not like I'm in love with the Sheed pick either, because he hasn't really shown it at AFL level. Really good waffle numbers, and was a good midfielder as a rookie coming through, but I'm just I don't think he's a bad choice, and I think he makes money, and that's the same case of Warple. And that I just think, can I use that money better, or can I get up to a better premium? But then that means bringing in another rookie, and I think that's the debate for everyone. Like, hypothetically, I think, say, Chris will have in this discussion, a Sheed and Zeeble, or would you rather, let's say, drop it down to maybe a Josh Bruce, and then you've got, your LDU, Tom Mitchells, those sort of types. Is that a balance? And is those guys around that 150, 60 mark going to be reliable enough compared to some of these 330 guys? But is the 330 guys can actually average that 90 to make enough cash? So some good debate there. Forward line again, it's Dunks, Canelio, Rosie, so no dramas there. Menzies comes on the bench for the first time. I don't think in 154 he's the option. There's been some talk about Owen Davey. There's definitely a spot there for an Essendon small forward. Tipper's obviously trying to come back with his fitness and that. I think that's more where the talk's at. But in saying that, there might be some inside knowledge there, but 154 on my bench as well, outside of maybe putting Will Phillips, and that's again, I think it's Cam McKenzie there at 180k. I just think it's too much to have on the bench, and that I get the better rookies are usually the better scorers, but I think some of these guys are sub-risks as well, and it's a lot of money to spend on sub-risks, and that's where if you had a McKenzie down, and let's just say it's an Oscar Baker, depending if these guys play, but if I'm conscious on the fact that both of them could be sub guys, I'd rather take the guy who's 60k cheaper and put on the bench, or have a loophole guy like maybe a Chesser comes in here. We look at a Lockie Cowan, and then we move like a Weedle onto the field. So that's one way you could go about that there, and then you've got 60 extra k up the bank in the bank. So that's, you've already got 30. That brings you to 90. And then is it like, okay, we're now moving towards, can we get Warple up to someone like a little bit more expensive there? That gives you options, or just having that money in the bank for security. All right, so we got B Ports. Don't know actually what your actual name is, but that's what you go on Twitter. So here we see Redmond and Young, and I know the next one, Will Day, which I know Benny Boy was talking about, potentially getting some midfield time and that. So I think he, again, it's in that mixture of Warple. See what happens on that. Like, they're not terrible picks at the moment. There's no real terrible picks, but can that money be spent better? Is Hunter Clark the better option? He's been training with Lenny Hayes. He's got a little bit more proven history there. So that maybe a little food for thought with that. I like Hayden Young. Is he going to able to reach, that top sort of 6 sort of guy? I think the problem with Fremantle is they've got multiple options. And we know they've got Luke Ryan, they've got Chapman. On any given week, they can go huge, but it's not they don't go, I don't see them all going like, averaging 110. Freo are very dependent on how that team plays, the opposition plays, and how they deliver the ball into their forward line. So some weeks Young gets off the chain, some weeks it's Ryan, some weeks it'll be Chapman. I just don't see him going from, say, 92 up to like 110. It might be 100 and that. So I don't think it's terrible, but at the same time, it's around that same price as Dacos. Like Dacos could definitely, especially there's talk about him playing midfield. I feel more secure with him, but I get the option that people like the intercept markers and that. So something to think about there. Nick Martin, that's the first time I've seen him. I think he really needs to be, if you're going to pick him, put him in your forward line. I don't get this love affection that people want to put these forwards and then move them later and stuff. Put your mids in your midfield. So Turk, McRae, Petrarca, this is actually a really different team, which is really interesting. I like the long pick. I think he's an chance here to get some early games for West Coast. Who have they lost out of there? Was it Rioli? I'm trying to think if they lost somebody else from that forward line as well, from the small forwards. But Long is definitely looks like he's going to start round one for them. Not going to be a great scorer. West Coast aren't going to be a great team. But I think as one of those forward options, definitely worthwhile having a look at. Petrarca is just so up and down. You can get Petrarca so much cheaper throughout the year. I think he dropped to $450 last year. So I don't think he's as good a pick as, say, a Cripps or someone like that. Horn Francis, I'm really jury out about that. Again, that's in that price range of Hopper and Sheed. Like Hopper, we know is playing midfield. Sheed, most likely is playing midfield. Horn Francis, we don't know exactly where he's going to be playing. There's different reports about how he's been off field and that. I'm not confident. If you've got some inside knowledge there, pass it on because I would love to hear it. Darcy with Jackson, again, I'm not sold on that unless we see in that preseason matches that Jackson's playing like solely forward or solely back, but so far in all the match sim, Jackson's been first ruck. So Darcy's been trying to play more forward and work on his forward craft. So I think Darcy needs to come out of people's sides. Forward line, Malira, it's an interesting one at 320. Talk about him playing half back. It's just his body. Like we see it all the time. We've had Malira in and out of our sides in other preseasons. So maybe it's Malira out, Martin forward, and then you bring in a Hopper at that price or a Sheed. I think that looks more safe than straight off there. And I don't mind Nick Martin. If he looks like playing on that wing, which all reports that he will be, it could be that real left field option. He came in like on a house on fire. Awesome rookie for us last year. Can he, continue to develop? And that I know Essendon really like him. So, interesting one there. We've got Danny. So Danny's got, again, Dawson, who's just been named Adelaide captain. Interesting choice because he's obviously only been there for 12 months, but obviously rate him really highly. So I don't think he's going to go down. I heard something about, captains go down. No, not going to happen. He's going to be one of their best players. They might even look for him more now. He might even pop up and kick some more goals, get around that midfield. Love the midfield. Turk, Bond, Brayshaw, Cripps, awesome. Again, that setup that we've talked about with so many people. First time I've seen the big O, I don't mind it. A couple of people have asked me about him hitting down to Neil, Dunkley and Ashcroft. We've talked about the rucks. I think they're going to be all around that same mark. Big O's never been that 110 guy, but could he be sold at that price and go 100? Is he more safe on field than Darcy Cameron and Lysett? Well, his body definitely has been. So I don't mind that if you're talking about somebody who a bit set and forget, and if you're worried about Grundy sharing with Gawn, he's one of the few rucks that don't really share. Like Darcy Fort might play forward, maybe give him a chop out, but even there's some games last year, I think they had Darcy Fort as the sub, so they were happy to go Big O on that field. Martin appears again, so it's good. At Comden, we've heard a lot of reports. I don't think he's going to be a great scorer, but definitely looks like lining up in round one by everything we've heard there. So potential there. There's the Davey coming on there. Again, not too bad. What do we got here? We got Luke. It's Sicily Dacos. Yep, again, no real dramas with that, how it's set up there. Midfield looks pretty solid. Very similar to those structures that we've talked about. Gilby, I think that must be a case of a more just trying to fit in cash for the 102 player. Bruce, that forward line, that I've actually had that forward line a few times, and that I've sort of debated between. Outside of, I think it was more Rosie that went out and Taranto stayed, but yeah, with Cameron there as the backup in case English goes down. And I think if you're going to start English, you're hoping Cameron is fit, and you need Cameron in at F4, because English at any point could miss a week. I think English is by far the best ruckman in the league for Supercoach. He's going to go 110, 115 when he's playing. Just the question is, how many games in a row can he play? He's absolutely built like sticky tape. But 1 year, he's going to put it all together. His body's going to hold up, and he's just going to dominate the competition. So we had, I think that was Luke. So we must be on to Patters now. Yes, we are. So he's gone two of the bigger dogs, Stewart and Dawson, with Dacos. So that's pretty solid in the back line. Yeah, we've talked about Godar. Couldn't you get to Caulfield, which I think with 10k you could. Charlie Dean has to come out, mate. Look at Luke Cowan from Carlton. Now that Williams has gone down, a lot of good talk about him, so there could be an easy option there. Midfield, yeah, some really good players. Rosie again, try to move him to the forward line if you can. Start those guys where their main position is. Marshall, Lysip, yep, I like that. And this is probably where we've had that discussion before, where you don't have, say, a Sheed or a Setterfield on that. Is it better to go Rosie down to the forward line, Fife goes out, and then one of them, if you could sort of work some of your other cash potentially? That's just the only person that Fife just doesn't. If Fife looks like in these preseason matches, playing midfield, then it's a completely different story. But all reports is he's going to start in the forward square, leading out from there, and they just don't need him to do it. They've got other guys. I think Freo, a little bit of regression this year. They're trying to pump in some more kids, build for the long term, and I don't think it's going to have to be Fife through there. So that's just my only concern with that. But outside of that, again, all these teams, they're really solid. Just kind of little nitpicking with some of this stuff. Anders. Ed Richards for the first time, yes, definitely got more of a role. The whole Bulldogs sort of lineup's been changed. With this talk about Caleb Daniel running through a bit of that midfield. You've got, we know what Bailey Dell's down there in the back line. Ed Richards, half-backs through that wing. So definitely why he's on that half-back line. Like, he's second half of the year. I owned him in a couple drafts, and he was awesome to own. So can he go next level on that? There'd be a little bit more of those points in the pie, especially Dunkley out. But if English misses games, and they can still win. I don't mind Richards in that. It's left field, but yeah, definitely something like that could pay off. Is he going to be top 6? I don't think so. Could he be top 10? Yes, for sure. A lot of any of these guys, can everyone, especially. You do see it every year. Like, the top 10's never the same for each position each year. If it was, we'd just, we'd already know what's, which players to tell you to choose. There's always chopping and changing. There's position players, young players get, have that hit. And sometimes it's just one player. Like, look at Sinclair last year, number 1 defender. And he's like, we think he should still have that role, but Ross Lyon, he might change things. Sinclair might be the one that drops out completely. A 1 year wonder. Like, there's no reason why Richards, he couldn't be the 1 year wonder this year. We know Beveridge, he's an interesting coach. So yeah, depending on what sort of roles that he's got set up for his players, Charlie Dean definitely needs to come out. And your forward line, Marshall, Cameron again. Philippou comes in. I think I've said that wrong, but he, I think he gets time again. And the problem with it is he a sub risk at some point there. 166k is a lot for a potential sub risk. At least with King or Bruce, if they've both, well, we know King definitely is going to play in Gold Coast forward line, and he's not going to be a sub risk. Josh Bruce as an option if he looks like he's getting that centre half back intercepting role, but at least we know those guys, if they're fit, they are playing, and they aren't going to get subbed. Where these sort of players do really do worry me, because it's only going to take 1 week of them starting as the sub and they come on and score a 10 or a 15, and then your whole cash gen's stuffed. So yeah, I'm a bit mindful of players like that. I think we've got Daryl. So we've got Stewart, Dawson, Dacos there again, like that back line. Charlie Dean goes out. Yeah, you got Cowan in, good boy. Like that. The midfield, Laird. Yeah, I don't care if it's Oliver or Laird or Neil. Just have one of them. It's more reliable there. I do like Cripps and Steele. Steele is looking so trim and fit. We know he tackles well. It's just a little question of how the Ross line factor, how that all comes into play. But yeah, I do like him. And Paddy Cripps we talked about before with no Walsh and Hewitt, and we know he just can absolutely smash it. The two Collingwood boys in Grundy and Cameron, well, not anymore, but just there's questions about Grundy there. I know Chris and I had this debate. I think Grundy can go 100 to 105. Chris thinks he doesn't get to 100 this year. It's a bit of a watch to see sort of how his role plays out. Is Marshall the better option? Yes, he is. That's the way I'd be going. But, potentially if Gawn has injuries, or if Gawn's playing a lot forward, well, there's definitely scope there for Grundy. The problem is we saw that last year. Jackson actually started ruck and he had the line share, and then they made the switch early on in the season. Grundy isn't a great forward, so you don't think that's going to exactly happen, but you just never know. Like, if things aren't working at Melbourne, and you would think they should, but if things weren't, or there's no reason why some games they might just go, hey, Gawn, you can do a bit more of the line share. But I think at times Gawn might be the one that's subbed off, so it could work out. Grundy could have some good fourth quarters if Gawn does get subbed out to rest if they're winning easily. It's a tough one there. It's not a bad pick. I just think he's in the mix with a lot of those other rucks. It's a thing for the ruckman. I think we're not getting the old days where we had some of those rucks going, 110. Like, yep, here's set and forget kind of situation there. Forward line, good, except for probably Bailey Humphries. Just the role is going to be that mid forward. 180k, yeah, I'm not sold. And even we've talked about this with the rookies and that, like, sub candidates then. So at least they're easier to start high than go down, and we talked about that before. So yeah, maybe keep them in now, have a look how they go pre-season, look for whoever's that little bit cheaper that does go better, bring that person in. You do have 372,000. That's I'm reading that right? Or no, so 72,000. I was going to say like a 3 there. 72,000. So you've got that ability to get one of these guys maybe up to an Oscar Allen, who's looking a bit more reliable at the moment and has the keys to the West Coast forward line. We've got, I think it's Not Near B. So Stewart, Doherty, Dawson. Wow, the 3 big guys. That's fantastic. And that is it spending too much in your back line. That's 1.8 million. But these guys are going to be there. Unless they get injured, they're going to be in the top 6. I'm extremely confident that they're going to be up. Something would have to go remarkably wrong for these guys not to feature up there. May as well start with them. But then, obviously, because of that, you've had to spend less money in that midfield. I've played with the idea of just having Oliver and Bont and just having the 2 and then a bit more value there. Noah Anderson, I do like. I think Tom Green's ahead of him, but I don't mind the pick. He is a true pod, and somebody who, if he works well with Took there and Witts is hitting the ball down, that he gets so many CBAs, he could lift his game. I just don't know if he's lifting. Could he go 105, 110? Yes. Is he going 115, 120? I don't think so. But he's got the talent. Definitely has the talent. Walkball again, that's a bit of a wait and see. For the rucks, Lysett again, Marshall. Everyone seems to have Marshall, most people. So that Dylan Moore, my boy, I like that. So if it's not Dunkley, Rosie, Cogs or Taranto, I think Moore is the obvious. If you're not going down to Cunnington, having Darcy Cameron there, or maybe a Zeeble type. It just depends how much midfield time he gets. He did score that 147, I think it was, without midfield time last year, but he definitely had a massive run when he got mid-minutes. So if he looks like he's getting CBAs and with Mitchell and Amira not there anymore, definitely somebody I'm interested in. But I just kind of want to see how that Hawthorn setup is this season. So, yeah, it's a little up in the air. Maybe a bit too many rookies here. I'd prefer your Sin Richards sort of guys on the bench. Can you get sort of some of that cash? And that's where all this money is spent here. Maybe it has to be, say, a Warple, for example, down. You could go like save a bit of money, a Finn Callahan, or is maybe one of these other rookies kind of comes on. You actually don't have Gimpy from West Coast, so maybe he comes on here. At Goda, maybe it's, say, Chesser for Goda. You get one of these other cheaper guys here, and then it's a Gibney on field, which will be fine because you would have had him on field there as it is. And that 130k, we go back to that forward line, and that might be able to get whichever one of these boys. You want, say, Finlay McRae, who seems to be the least out of favourite. He then can get anyone up to about 250, and there's a few options there that we've talked about. All right, we've got Supercoached. So Himmelberg, 100% loved him, had him in my team, locked and loaded. He is now playing forward. Unfortunately, he is out. It's just such a shame because he would have been like an absolute lock for me. So I'd swap him either to Dacos, but you've got 107k there. So again, it's maybe a Stewart, a Doherty, any of those, all those ones around that price. If you like Ridley, Redmond, some of those guys that have appeared, Eddie Richards again, like that. Midfields, as we've sort of talked about, there's that Gimby pick in that. And we talked before about, you move your Butters and your Rosies and all these guys. I don't like seeing them in the midfield. I would, and now I'm saying it's not bad to have your defender there. The only difference there is it's a rookie. I would prefer to have, like, say, Chesser here or Wagner here, and then Gimpy's more on field. But if you're confident that Weddle or McKenna are playing, it does give that option. So I've got no problem with your rookie forwards, mids, defenders playing on here. It's more those mid prices or the premiums. They should be in their main position. So, I can live with that. As I said, Finlay McRae, maybe have a look at a different option there. Marshall, Darcy Cameron, it's pretty good. Sold in that we've talked about this. First time we've seen Aaron Francis. He could be in the discussion if he looks like lining up next to the McCartan boys down back. So definitely one to watch there. Obviously, he's gone to Sydney for a reason. So, might be getting some early games. So, one to definitely have a look at. All right, we've got Michael. We've got two more to go. This is my favourite setup, Stewart and Dacos, as I've said. Ben Long, I'm not sold on at all. I just can't warm to that. Maybe he gets that lockdown, but Powell coming back from injury, Brandon Ellis plays down there, more the wing, but drops a half. But they've got a few options. I think for three, if he was 250, we're having a completely different conversation. I just don't know. And maybe you are a bit of a Saint. I don't know if you're a Saints fan or not, but because you've got Caulfield in there, maybe Hunter Clark's the better option for that, or even Bose. Actually, I don't think I've actually seen a lot of Bose in here. And I can't really recall seeing too many Bose. Jack Bose hasn't left my side, so that's a cheaper option. Charlie Dean, as we've said, has to go. Gimpy, even if it's Gimpy, big, out of long, and that's where you get like your Sheed, Setterfield kind of type there, so that could be an option. Marshall Lysett, and then that's my favourite setup in the forward line. With those four, I prefer like a Bruce or a King or something like that, and maybe that's Menzies. Did we see how much cash you had? 15k. So maybe there's something we can do. What we talked about there, maybe it's long down to one of those guys, creates a little bit more cash, gets Menzies up to a little bit more of a safer option, unless obviously he, for whatever reason, looks like starting and not being a sub risk. And that forward line is big tick there. And Simon, to round us off, so I think he was the first person to get in contact with me. So, and here we go. We see the Bose. So I like this sort of full defense setup. 192,000k in the bank. That's brilliant. I don't know if you want to spend some more of that, but the team actually looks really good. Dawson and Yo, I like the idea. Maybe it's just the one big dog. There's so many options in this back line. Still could fit Caulfield. You could get one of the money up for that. There's even like a Jaden Hunt. I'm not sold on that, but if he was to get the role, for example, Charlie Dean obviously has to go. So maybe get Weddle in for an extra 7K. That ticks that off. Laird and Oliver, beautiful. Even Bond still there. Like this midfield is awesome. And you've got the money like Blakely. I'm not that sold on. You don't have Ashcroft, so could some of that money again? That's 80K gets you Ashcroft, and then you've like that midfield. I kind of nearly want to just copy. Big ticks there. And that forward line, let's see what's going. Marshall, Cameron again, awesome. And this pretty well set up. It feels like it was one of my teams that I had a couple of weeks ago. Really playing around with this and going, I potentially just like Took a little bit more than Laird, but I think Laird's fantastic. Obviously, as we said, that captain option. It's hard to knock this. As I said, Dean, Blakely, the rest looks pretty solid. It's just the question is now people will now move into that 4 deep. But I think Oscar Allen, if he looks like he's fit and firing, which he all reports he is, and he's everything it matches him, he's doing well. Definitely holds up there. Riccardi's a bit of a surprise there. I don't know what reason he's sitting there, unless there's something there's no sort of loophole there, so maybe take him up and upgrade. I don't think you've got Jury, do you? No, so that's an easy spot maybe to a Blake Jury, who looks like getting a bit more of a role for North, especially if he's been more in that A team, or the probables, I think they call them, where Gota's been the one that's out. So that is that. So thank you for everybody for sending in those teams, and that we'll definitely do this as we get closer to the season again. I'm happy to even if you just want to message and talk through what people are thinking. But everyone's got different structures. There's no right or wrong here. If Ben or Chris had a look at some of these teams, they might say a few things different. But also have a look. It's a good opportunity to have a look at what other people are doing, and you might think, oh, actually, that could work as my setup, or that one could. Like, I don't like playing favourites, but that last one there from Simon, I definitely have had. I'm pretty soft around some of those selections, and I've got a real soft spot for that. So that ruck lineup, I think that's going to be, if Cameron looks like lining up round 1 with no problems with his hammy, I think that's going to be very popular. So as I said, no right or wrong answers. That's just my opinion, one of many opinions out there in the Supercoach world. But definitely we'll get more information, especially come that Feb 23rd, 24th weekend. As we get to see actually how teams are structuring up and because there's only 2 practice matches, you might in that hit out where they're playing, some teams are doing like 6 quarters and stuff like that. We're probably going to see some rookies get their opportunity, but then get into that following weekend where the I think there's only that one official practice match weekend. And we'll definitely see what probably the best 22s are lining up. What's that, on March the 2nd? That kicks off on the Thursday. So we'll definitely have all the information we need by then. Unlike those old preseason cups where they were 3 weeks, and 1 week you had like mostly rookies. Week 2, some of the older guys come in, and then week 3 we get the proper side. 1 week of proper practice matches, and then the early hit out. We get a better look out of how these teams should line up. So that's it. Enjoy. Check out the rest of our content, and we'll talk soon. Bye.